Overcoming the silent pain of rejection. Rejection is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is silent, hidden deep within the heart, shaping how we see ourselves and how we relate to others. The Bible speaks directly to this pain, showing us that our true identity is not defined by human rejection, but by God's eternal acceptance. Through the lives of biblical characters, we see how rejection can be transformed into purpose when anchored in spiritual truth. Leah, God sees the unloved. Leah's story in Genesis 29:31-32 reveals a woman who longed for her husband's affection but was overlooked. Yet God saw her pain and blessed her with children. Leah's worth was not determined by Jacob's rejection, but by God's compassion. This teaches us that when people fail to recognize our value, God Himself affirms it. David, chosen beyond human eyes. David was overlooked by his family when Samuel came to anoint a king, but God reminded Samuel in 1 Samuel 16:7 that He looks at the heart, not outward appearance. David's rejection became the backdrop for his divine calling. This shows us that being overlooked by people may be the very moment God sets us apart for His purpose. Jesus, bearing the weight of rejection. Isaiah 53:3 describes Jesus as despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows acquainted with grief. He bore rejection so that we could be accepted by God. His suffering proves that rejection is not foreign to God's plan. It can be redeemed and transformed into salvation. Joseph, betrayed but elevated. Joseph's brothers rejected him and sold him into slavery in Genesis 37:28. Yet what seemed like betrayal was God's way of positioning him to save nations. Joseph's story reminds us that rejection may feel like loss, but God can use it to redirect us toward destiny. The Samaritan woman, identity restored. In John 4:17-18, the Samaritan woman carried shame and rejection from society. Yet Jesus revealed Himself to her, transforming her pain into testimony. Her encounter shows that Jesus meets us in our brokenness and redefines our identity. The prodigal son, embraced after rejection. Luke 15:20 shows the father running to embrace his son who had rejected him. This parable reveals God's heart. He restores and accepts us even when rejection comes from our own choices. His acceptance is greater than any rejection we face. Jeremiah, known before birth. Jeremiah 1:5 reminds us that God knew and set Jeremiah apart before he was born. This truth anchors us. Divine identity precedes human rejection. Our worth is established by God before anyone else's opinion. Paul, confidence in God's approval. Romans 8:31 declares, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" Paul faced rejection from many, yet he anchored his confidence in God's approval. This verse teaches us that God's yes outweighs every human no, accepted in Christ. Ephesians 1:6 proclaims that we are accepted in the Beloved. This is the ultimate antidote to rejection. Our identity is secure in Christ. We don't need to strive for acceptance because in Him we already belong. David's assurance of God's presence. Psalm 27:10 says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will take me in." David knew that God's acceptance was stronger than human abandonment. Even when earthly relationships fail, God's presence remains constant, living free from rejection. The silent pain of rejection loses its grip when we embrace biblical truth. God sees us even when others overlook us. Our identity is established in Christ, not in human opinion. Rejection can redirect us toward God's greater plan, and His acceptance is permanent and unshakable. 5 principles to apply. 1. Daily affirm God's acceptance each morning by declaring His promises over your life. 2. Root identity in Christ by meditating on scriptures that remind you of His purpose. 3. See rejection as redirection by trusting God's sovereignty in every closed door. 4. Lean into God's presence through prayer and worship when loneliness strikes. 5. Practice forgiveness to release the grip of rejection and walk in freedom. To learn more on God's words and unlocking His promises, like, share, and subscribe to this channel.